So,
Dad humor.
yeah, just a little bit. All right, so just sit right back. You'll hear a tale. Tale of a faithful trip. It started from this ancient land aboard this wooden ship. Huh?
No.
I'll let it fly.
You're gonna let it slide?
I'll let it slide.
Hey, at least I didn't sing it, because I was thinking about it.
He was working on the song.
I was working on the second verse on the way here, and I thought, nah, I'll let that go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Small miracles.
That's the same as the first, even worse.
We already have it in our brain now.
Second verse, same as the first. Could get better, but it's going to get worse. All right. So let's talk about Noah. Okay? I can't, but I know a guy who can. Tonight we will look at the story of Noah and the ark. And yes, Noah does have a story arc, but this is an ark with a K.
Yeah.
So, okay. See, I knew you were already.
I saw that.
So Noah's one of 8 people who lived both before and after the flood. So we're going to look at the reasons for the flood. We're going to look at the miracles in the flood. We will look at life after the flood. We'll discuss all of this. I will take my customary care and time as we go through this story.
As you should.
So we will understand Noah and the flood. So let's look at the story of the flood. That takes place in Genesis chapter 6. Now I don't have many verses tonight, so if you have questions, sing out, and we will. But you have to sing the verse to the song that I just showed up there. So I hope you were paying attention.
I don't have any questions.
Oh, I thought you were biting your lip trying to keep from busting out in song. I was going to be like, Robin, just sing. Sing, sister. Okay. All right, so Genesis 6, 1 through 8. Let's look at the verses that we're going to study. Then the people began to multiply on the earth, and the daughters were born to them. The sons of God saw the beautiful women, and they took any they wanted as their wives. And then the Lord said, my spirit will not put up with humans for such a long time, for they are only mortal flesh. In the future, their normal lifespan will be no more than 120 years. In those days, and for some time after that, giant Nephilites lived on the earth, for whenever the sons of God had intercourse with women, they gave birth to children who became the heroes and famous warriors of ancient times. Continuing in verse 5, the Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. And so the Lord was sorry he had ever made them and put them on the earth. It broke his heart. And the Lord said, I will wipe this human race I have created from the face of the earth. Yes, and I will destroy every living thing, all the people, the large animals, the small animals that scurry along the ground, and even the birds of the sky. I'm sorry I ever made them. But Noah found favor with the Lord. Okay, so this is the opening set of verses that bring us to the story of Noah. All right, and there's a lot there. Now, I selected the verses out of the New Living Translation, but they don't really do us justice here. So we're going to talk about some words and some definitions that the way they're translating the words, translating the idea and the intent, I don't think is incredibly accurate. And this story already has some elements in it that lend itself to wild speculation, and we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. So the story opens with a discussion about, or a comment about, people begin to multiply on the earth and daughters were born to them. Now, the reason that it starts this way is because to this moment in time, if you're reading through Scripture, the only thing you're seeing are boys, male names, right? Cain and Abel and Seth, and then this one had that one and that one. Now, it's obvious that this wasn't spontaneous creation, so there were women involved, but there weren't too many. So we are approximately 1,500 years into creation by the time we get to this moment in the story. Adam has been dead about 700 years, 600 or 700 years. Noah was born, and we'll see this as we get into the story a little bit more. Noah was born about 500 years before this moment. Noah missed Adam, I can't remember now, by like 50 or 60 or 70 years. Adam died, Noah was born. However, Noah's father, Methuselah had a lot of time with Noah. So Noah had a lot of time with Adam, excuse me. He had a lot of time with Adam. Noah would have heard firsthand the stories told to Methuselah. In other words, he's not getting it. My granddaddy told my daddy, and my daddy told me, right? It's my daddy told me that Adam, some 6 or 7 generations before, told me, and now I'm telling you. So I mean, it's only two retellings. So Noah is carrying a very, very accurate understanding of Adam's life, okay? So 1,500 years, and in that time, like I said, we've only had about 8 generations, counting the oldest born in each generation, okay? So yeah, you've got a lot of people being born, and so by 1,500 years, it started to reach critical mass. You had enough, because remember, you start with Adam and Eve, right? And so that's one man, one woman, you're having babies. Well, then you got Seth, you got Cain, he's doing his thing, and pretty soon, right, you've got enough people having babies that the population really begins to explode. This is not a large area of the world that they're in. When Cain moved away, he didn't move that far away. And we'll see that as we get into the examination of these verses, okay? It's not like Adam and Eve. Let's make an assumption, big assumption. Let's assume that the Garden of Eden was somewhere in the Middle East, Iran, Iraq, somewhere in there. It's not like Cain moved all the way to Russia. You know, days and days and days and days and days away, right? He was right there in the area. It would be something possibly similar to if the Garden of Eden, or when they got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve settled in Dayton, Cain just came across the river and lived in Liberty. Or maybe I should reverse that. You know, Adam and Eve were living in Liberty, and Cain went across the river and lived in Dayton, okay? If you want to go, well,
it is quite hellish driving through Dayton.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Okay, maybe it's a little worse than that. Maybe, you know, Cain is living in Baytown, right? But he's very close enough that a couple of days there's still some interaction between them. So we're 1,500 years into creation. We're starting to see a population explosion when you take into context that we're all still living in a small area, okay? Also, one other thing to consider is that the Garden of Eden during this time is not hidden. The Garden of Eden was never hidden.
It was guarded.
It was protected. It was guarded. An angel sat there. So you could, and perhaps people did, you know, top the little rise and look down into the valley, and there was the Garden of Eden with that angel standing there with the flaming sword, you know, going, make my day. You know?
Make my millennium.
Yeah, by millennium. So the Garden of Eden was still there. So if Adam told the story, right, of how he got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and somebody goes, "You're nuts, that never happened," all Adam had to do is say, "Well, yeah, come with me. I'm going to show you. I used to live in there." Now they might say, "Nah, I don't believe you ever lived in there," right? But they couldn't dispute the fact that there was a garden, and there was a bright, shiny angel with a flaming sword standing there keeping people out. And no, I don't think that was a symbol or an analogy. That was a honest to goodness, visible angel with the mean look on his face going, try me, buddy. Just try me. Okay? So that all of that plays in. All right, now I say that because later in the story, we're going to see the rest of the population disbelieve disbelieve Noah. And it is an incredible moment because you can still see the Garden of Eden. Now, one other thing to remember, by way of explanation, unless you have lived in a time, it is very difficult to imagine what it was like in that time. Okay? Now, today, our children, looking around the room, so our children, right, and some of the younger almost children, yes, I was pointing at you. We can talk about, so those of you who were alive in the 60s, the early 70s, right? So when we talk about just the two of us, really? Oh, okay. I got a couple of people going, yeah, no, I don't want to raise my hand that far. That dates me. But we can talk about what it was like. It's different, but it's not that different. So it's easy for the younger generation to understand kind of what it was like. But if you go back 100 years or 150 years and start talking about what it was like, it is so different than it is today. We start to have trouble imagining what that was like, okay? So if we try to talk about what the earth was like pre-flood, it was so vastly different than what we have today. It is difficult for us to imagine what life would be like. The same thing, if you were alive then and Adam is trying to explain to you what it was like in the garden, it was so vastly different than any experience that anyone living other than Adam and Eve had. It would be difficult to imagine if you could imagine it at all, okay? So I want you to keep this in mind. This is the context that we have as we start to look at this story, okay? So the other thing is, in this 1,500 years, in that short time, humans have become so corrupt that it sickens God. So here's an interesting thought. 1,500 years. Today, right, we have a very interesting, even today, we have this very interesting statistic. There are more people alive and walking around on the face of the earth than have ever lived. Even at this period in time, there are more people alive than are dead, have ever lived, right? Most of the people, in fact, that have lived are still living at 1,500. Because remember, lifespans were 800 and 900 years old. So you had a great many people that were still alive, okay? So I want you to keep that in mind. So people are living 800 and 900 years, and God looks down, and in 1,500 years, people have become so corrupt, so sinful, so wicked, right, that it literally sickens God. Right? This is, now, I don't know how to explain this, but if you have ever built something, right? I have built things out of wood, shelves and cabinets and boxes, doodad boxes, and things of that nature. You might build something out of metal, right? And what does it make you feel like if you've ever done that and then saw that item abused or broken by complete disregard for the item, right? In other words, maybe you make a beautifully ornate box, you give it to your wife gives it to your kids, and then you see the grandkids playing with it, and they're using it to haul mud out of the, and you're like, what are you doing, right? Because you made that, right? And you made that with love, and you gave that to somebody that you loved, and now here's another generation completely mistreating and abusing. So I'm trying to get you to see, right, this is how God is experiencing, right, what he sees on the earth. This perfect earth that he had made had been corrupted by Adam and Eve. God was, not that he was okay with that, but he could handle that, right? That's okay. We'll do sacrifices, we'll get that, and there's still redeemable qualities. But now 1,500 years later, they are, and look, there's no industry. It's not like they're pouring harsh chemicals out on the earth and ruining the environment, right? It's their actions toward one another and their complete disregard of God in the process that is causing God this issue, okay? And so it's so corrupt, it sickens him. It sickens him to the point that he says, large animals, small animals, people, I'm wiping the slate clean. The verses do not particularly say. God may have intended to just wad the earth up like a piece of paper and throw it in a dustbin and start over. We don't know. God said, I'm done. This is too much. Okay? So 1,500 years, people are multiplying literally like rabbits. I want to go back and hit that point. So ladies, how many children do you think you could have in 700 years? Now, women were living... I've already got people going, wait, what? So think about the average age, so they were living to be 900 years old. Here's where I come up with that number. Living to be 900 years old. Figure we don't have no kids before we're 100. And at some point, we're not going to be able to have kids anymore. So let's give that 150 years. So about 250 years off of 900. That's 700 years. Just round it out.
700 kids. A baby a year.
A baby a year, because there's no birth control.
Give her 3 months to recuperate,
Right.
and let's go.
Think.
You're on your own now.
It's always the pastor.
Yeah.
Well, by the time number 18 gets there, the first one should be out the house and married by then.
No.
About 15 probably.
No. Because in that day and time, they weren't getting married till they were 50 or 60 and not having kids till they were 100.
Oh.
When you had somebody having kids at 50 or 60, that was like a 12-year-old having babies. I mean, they were like, wait, what?
So you're supposed to have 40 at home at least at the top?
Huh?
Well, you'd have 40 kids at home minimum?
Well, think about it. So if you look at the scripture, it says, like, I'll use Abram and Sarah as an example. It says Abram packed up his entire household and they left, right? So in that time, a household would include the mother and the father and all of the kids, plus all of the livestock, the property that they owned, and any servants that they had. That would be a household. It would be probably hundreds of people. So Sarah and Abraham probably left her with at least, with no children, but probably 20 to 30 servants and hands, and with all the livestock.
Imagine the size of the house.
Yeah.
All right, we don't
Well,
know.
10 dwellers, probably.
So let's just give you some context here. We don't know how old Adam was when Cain and Abel were born.
We don't.
It doesn't say. But here's what it does say. Starting in chapter 5, Book of the Generations of Adam, the day God created man. I'm reading out of King James because I like King James. Male and female created he them, so on and so forth. Verse 3, Adam lived 130 years, begat a son his own likeness, after his image, called his name Seth. So this is the Seth is the godly line that took Abel's place. Okay? And Adam lived after he begot Seth 800 and so on years. He begat sons and daughters. So Adam didn't just go, okay, well, there's our boy. I'm quitting. Right? He had sons and daughters. And it says, Seth lived 105 years and begat Enos. Okay? And then he lived, 807 years after that. And then he died. Enos lived 90 years and begat Cainan. Right? So you see, we're getting about 100 years. Now, Cainan's a little early. Okay? And so Cainan lived 70 years and begat Mahalalel. Well, that's whew, okay. And that means praiser of God. So we can see that there are some people who are following Adam, following Abel, following Seth's examples of worship. Okay. Mahalalel lived 65 years and begat Jared. Now there's a pretty ambitious, aggressive marriage right there. They got married and got busy. Okay, Jared lived 162 years and begat Enoch. So now we're back the other way, 162 years. Okay, Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah, and that's because Enoch died or left early. He wasn't around long. Methuselah lived 187 years and begat Lamech. Lamech, let's see, where is it? Lamech lived 182 years and begat a son, and they called his name Noah. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. You don't start till you're 100. Probably leave off when you're 700. Or maybe not. They may have had babies, up into their 800s. We don't know. But yeah, if you're having 9 months, every 9 months you got a baby, and there is no birth control. So as soon as mama starts feeling good again and kind of gets her shape back, right? Daddy looks at her and says, "Hey, woohoo!" Right? And you're pregnant again. Right? Now, did it happen that way? I don't know. We weren't there. We can't tell. Maybe they're only having a kid every 2 years, right? Yeah. Maybe mama was like, "Hey, I'm not going through this again this year. Forget this noise. You can just wait." Okay? I don't know. Again, if you go back in our own existence a couple of 100 years, you don't really have to go back that far, right? How large were families?
10 to a dozen kids.
Yeah.
If they were agriculture.
We got a brother over here with how many siblings?
6 sisters, 2 brothers.
Yeah. With two that.
With two that passed away. So
she had
right.
11.
So large families on the order of 10 or 12. Now, if you got married when you were 18 or 19 and you had babies all through your 20s, right? You had 15, 16, 17 years there. Take out the 3 months or 4 months in between, and how many does that equal? 10, 12, 13 kids. And that's what so it's not too far in even our own history when the large family, especially by today's standards, right? Today, we got 2 kids and we're thinking, oh my gosh, 3 kids, oh Lord have mercy, that's a lot of kids. These ladies before the flood, 1,500 years, and you had a huge crowd. There was some kids being born, okay? So, that's where we come from, okay? So Eve could have had 700 babies before she aged out. People always want to know, well, where did Cain's wife come from? Ta-da! Right? It says Adam had other sons and daughters, they weren't having their first kids, most of them, until they were over 100 years old. And that doesn't talk about how old the women were. So, you know, if Cain's 150 years old and he looks at a daughter, one of his sisters, and he's been out of the house for 30, 40 years. Kind of comes back to visit mom, and oh, look, here's a sister running around. She's 60. Hubba, hubba. Right?
What'd you say? It's law and order. Well, by our standards today, the way that things were done at that time seemed alien to us, you know.
Well, even with the kings of the Old Testament having multiple wives, it
Yeah.
seems, I mean, I know we still have some churches that somehow allow that. Or
Yeah.
Right.
supposedly allow that.
So again, this is why I had the conversation, right? It's hard to imagine the way things were in an environment that we have never experienced, right? We want to judge by what? The environment in which we live, right? Today. But if, like I said, if we go back not even 100 years, we start to find much larger families. Okay, and it was a feast or famine kind of a deal. If she could have babies, if he could make babies, you had a lot of them. If one of you was not so good at it, or broken, or whatever you medically infirm, right? You didn't have any babies. It was.
Paul, you gave me a broke woman.
So, I was watching.
Lord.
Never mind, I won't go there. I was watching a comedian, and he was talking about Eve and treating your wife right. And anyway, yeah. And so her first daughters could have been having babies for several hundred years by the time she quits having babies. In other words, today, it is not unheard of for a daughter to have a baby within a couple of years of mom having her last one. Right? Right? It's not unheard of. It's not common, but it's not unheard of. Right? What's more unheard of is a granddaughter having a baby just about the time grandma has her last ones. Right? That would be, well, no, wait a minute, right? For that to happen in today's society, 2 or 3 of them will start really young, right?
Really?
But here, Eve has had, I mean, she may be going through pregnancy for several decades with her oldest daughters going through it with her, having more great grandbabies, you know what I'm saying? More grandbabies. So and then the grandbabies are having babies, and Eve is still having babies. And boy, it doesn't take long to get a big family that way. This is one of the reasons there were never any family reunion barbecues before the flood.
Big old cow.
Yeah, several actually. That's really what happened to the Brontosaurus. Hey, we're having a barbecue. Invite all the kids.
He was put on the rotisserie.
Yeah. Okay. Oops. No. Let me see here. What page am I looking for here? 7. Okay, that one goes there. Okay. Now, in these verses, there is something that leads a lot of people to try to propose a controversial theory. And I don't want to just gloss over it, okay? I want you to hear it and want to talk about it, okay? And so I've titled this slide, The Angels Did What? So the next verses are often misunderstood. So let's recap them here. In verse 2, the sons of God saw the beautiful women, and they took any they wanted as their wives. Now, that to me is a little clunky. In the King James, it reads like this. The sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Okay? Coupled with verse 4, this has led to some pretty wild speculation. Verse 4 reads, in those days, and for some time after, giant Nephilites lived on the earth. For whatever the sons of God had intercourse with women, they gave birth to children who became the heroes and the famous warriors of ancient times. Okay. Again, I think that the New Living Translations kind of fail us a little bit. But let's talk about, in the King James, they refer to it as giants, and that term is translated to Nephilim, okay? The Nephilim. And this has led to speculation that fallen angels, or Nephilim, came and impregnated earth women. And I'm sorry, as I was writing this, I was thinking the Nephilim, and they're coming down, and all I could hear in my head was the Nephilim going, take me to your leader, right? It's the UFO thing, right? Because I see this as being a ridiculous idea, but I want to go through it. So people will often, that support this theory, will often cite Jude 1 through 6. Jude 1 through 1:6, not 1 through 6. Yeah. Jude verse 1, or chapter 1, verse 6 reads, and I remind you, this is Jude speaking, of the angels who did not stay within the limits of authority God gave them, but left the place where they belong. God has kept them securely chained in prisons of darkness, waiting for the great day of judgment. See? Right? That's where they go. They say the angels left the angel stuff, and they came down, and they got to partying with the women, and they started having babies of their own. All right? And we got men of renown, heroes. And again, like I said, the New Living Translation does us an injustice with those two terms. So let's examine this idea for just a minute. So if the assumption here is that the angels violated the limits God placed on them by mating with women, the assumption here is the angels violated the limits God placed on them by mating with women and were punished along with the rest of humanity. So the angels came down, took advantage of the women, right? And then they got punished, and so did all of humanity. I just don't see that as a reasonable strategy from God. Now, again, who knows the mind of God, but I would think that if those specific children were the cause of God's disgust, those specific children would have been the target of his judgment. Okay, I'm taking the angels and I'm throwing you in the pit, chaining you up. You ain't ever going to get out again. And oh, by the way, those children, I'm wiping them out. Okay? Not all of humanity. God was sickened by all of humanity. So it doesn't necessarily follow that this is the problem. All right? Now, I want to remind you about Jesus' comment in Matthew 22:30. They were trying to trick Jesus, and they came to him and said, there was a woman, and her husband died. And according to the law, the husband's brother took the woman to wife, married her. And then he died. And his brother married the girl. And then he died. Of course, nobody thinks to look at what's going on with this woman. But still, until she'd gone through all 7 brothers in the family. And finally, she died. And you know what their question was? Not what was she feeding them. Huh? Well, that's what they want to know. In the hereafter, in heaven, who's she going to be married to, seeing she was wife to 7 men? And they congratulated themselves on their very shrewd entrapment of Jesus. But Jesus, having honesty and truth as his bulwarks, provided this answer. When the dead rise, they will neither marry nor be given in marriage. In this respect, they will be like the angels in heaven. The angels in heaven don't need to be married. What is marriage for anyway?
Making babies.
To provide a structure, a foundational structure, so that children will have the benefit of education from the elders. Right? Anywhere else, everywhere else in the animal kingdom, how long does a baby stay with its mother?
Till it's weaned.
Not very long.
Not very long. Right?
In the animal kingdom, mama kicks the baby off and you're on your own.
Yeah. Until the next breeding season,
Yeah.
at the most. Now they might hang around close, but mama's done kicked them off. And when the lion comes and gets that yearling, right, mama's over here going, oh, that's too bad. Oops. Right? So there's no care, lasting care or concern. There's no family there. But in the human world, it's different, okay? And so we could say, well, okay, angels may not marry or not, but they could still do the deed, as it were, right? But let's look at the phrase now, sons of God. Keep this in the back of your mind. Jesus said they're like the angels. They either marry or given in marriage. So now let's look at the sons of God. That's where all this started. The sons of God. They're equating sons of God with angels. Okay? So if we look at the ancient Hebrew, it's exactly what it says, a child or offspring of God. It can also mean a creation of God, namely angels. Okay? And as support for this, we can see this in Job chapter 2, verse 1. It says the sons of God came into heaven, and then God starts talking to Satan. And it is referring to angels. Okay? But in Luke 3:23, when Luke is bringing or going through the genealogy of Jesus, it ends with the phrase, because he starts with Jesus, who is supposedly the son of Joseph, who is the son of this one, who is the son of that one, the son of David, blah, 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 son of Abraham. And he gets all the way back to Adam, and he ends this with Adam, which was the son of God. Oh, but wait. Adam is the son of God. So what are we learning here? What do we need to do? Since it means both things, and it's used both ways, what we have to look for to make a proper definition or a proper interpretation is context. What are we talking about? In Job, it's obvious we're in heaven and we're talking about angels. In Luke, we're not talking about angels. We're talking about men. Son of this, son of this, son of this, son of this. Which was the son of God? Adam was the son of God. He was created by God. He was God's creation. As are any children born, they are the creation of their parents. One of the greatest miracles that God gave us was the ability to spawn new life. He gave us that ability. Right? We can produce life. All right? Now, the definition of giants. Let's look at that a little closer. Now, in the Hebrew, Nephilim, if you look up that ancient Hebrew or Aramaic, giants or Nephilim means simply a feller. Right? And a feller was a bully or a tyrant. Now, if I follow that logic, I could say Hitler was Nephilim. He was a giant. He was a bully. He was a tyrant. I could say Mussolini. I could say Pol Pot. I could say these were bullies and tyrants. And so now, if I understand the definition of this word, and I look at the context of the verses, sons of God, in this context, what I begin to see is we're talking about two different groups of people. Right? Remember, we talked about Mahalalel, who was a praiser of God. Right? And so we see a godly line. We see parents who are raising children to know, to understand, and to worship God. And we see Cain's line. And I didn't read his lineage, but he's got actually very similarly named children down through the ages, okay? And so when the sons of God started looking at the daughters of men, right? Because the son of God is someone who still honors God, who is still worshiping God, and he looks at the daughters of men, right? The lineage of Cain, the lineage of Adam, looking at the lineage of Cain, they started picking wives out of that group. Now, quick quiz for you. Solomon had 900 wives. 300 wives and 700 concubines.
Correct.
Okay? That's a lot of girls. Now, that doesn't mean that he was sleeping with all of them on any given night, okay? But what is the reason Solomon turned away from God? Do you know? I'll give you a minute. What is the reason Solomon turned away? We know that Solomon turned away from God. Now, there are verses that seem to indicate that he turned back to God in his very later years, but he turned away from God during a major portion of his reign. Why?
He began to follow the gods of the women that he was in a relationship with.
The verse coming out of the Bible is, his foreign wives turned his head. Oh, baby, if you really loved me, you would...
He violated the scripture of being unequally yoked.
Right. His wives seduced and corrupted.
Yep.
Okay? You say, yeah, maybe so. And I say, okay, let's go back 5 chapters in the book of Genesis, and what do we see happen in the Garden of Eden? The wife, right? Here, try this apple. Look, I'm eating it, and I'm still breathing, right? Now, she was deceived. I'm not saying that she was a Jezebel, right? She was innocent in her intention, okay? I want y'all to stay with me on this. She was innocent in her intention. She thought she had found a good thing and was sharing it with her husband. But what? Adam heard God say the words, don't eat the tree, the fruit of the tree. Nobody eats the tree. Well, unless you're a beaver. Okay? Don't eat the fruit of the tree. So when Eve reached up to grab the fruit, Adam was there watching. What should he have done?
Stop it.
Stop.
Woman, stop. What are you thinking? Right? When she took a bite, he's like, oh my gosh, what have you done? And she said, look, I'm fine. Have a bite yourself. What should Adam have done?
No, thank you. Say no.
So this is the perfect place. I restrained myself earlier. I can't restrain myself any further. I was listening to comedian Ben Stein, right? And he said one of the greatest blessings that God ever gave a man was a naked lady. Now, he did say, before you, don't giggle at me, he did say that you only get one, and she's very expensive, right? And the payment, the cost of that is the rest of your life taking care of her, right? But I say that to put you in this frame of mind. Eve is handing this apple to Adam, and all he can see is a naked lady. Oh, sure, baby, let me have an apple, right? He lost his mind. Guys, we have a tendency to lose our mind. Happened to Solomon, happened to Adam, okay?
David.
And David, there's another one there, David. Now, in David's story, just to modernize it a little bit, when David called to Bathsheba and had her come to his castle, what should she have done? No! I'm a married woman. What is so wrong with you? Right? But she thought, oh, he's the king. She also, I don't have scriptural evidence for this, but her husband was a foreigner.
He was a Hittite.
He was a Hittite, right? And she thought, oh, he's the king and he's Jewish. This has got to be okay. So, in that case, the role was reversed a little bit. But anyway, it's a fella, a bully, a tyrant. Okay? These were people who forced, coerced, scared people into doing their will. Now, this comes from a root word, a giant or bully or tyrant. It comes from a root word, I lost my slide here, that means to fall, to cast down, to fall away, to be a fugitive, to have, be inferior. So these giants, the inference in this word is that in God's eyes they were lesser. They were bullies. They were tyrants. They were fallen men. They were men of ill repute, if you will. Now, I know Living Translation says heroes and famous warriors, right? But famous at its core simply means well known. It can be for good or for bad. So we break famous into two words, don't we? There's famous, which usually means good, and then there's infamous, which usually means bad. Okay? So we see here that the mood is kind of changing. Now, when we understand the language, when we look at the context, what we're seeing is that these aren't angels coming down from heaven and seducing women, tricking women, giving them roofies so that they wake up pregnant, okay? No, it is God's people, God's true worshipers intermarrying into Cain's line and becoming corrupted in their faith, in their belief. Okay? So let's look at verse 4 again. In those days, and for some time after, giant Nephilites, now remember what that means, bullies, tyrants, fallen souls, okay, lived on the earth. For whenever the sons of God had intercourse with women, they gave birth to children who became heroes and famous warriors of ancient times. Now that last line, like I've been saying, it doesn't do us any favors. I like the King James interpretation. It just says mighty men or strong men, right, which were of old, men of renown, men who were known. Strong men. You know what they called, who was the guy in Panama that Bush or Reagan went down there and got? Bush went down there and got. Not Castro. He's Florida. Who was the guy in Panama? Noriega. Thank you. You know what Noriega was called? You know his title was elsewhere in the world, the strong man of Panama. Right? A lot of times, especially in third world countries, South America, right, a tyrant or a bully is known as the strong man of that country. The mighty men, which were all strong man of old. He coerced by force, by blackmail, by whatever means necessary, folks to follow him. Okay, so
I'm sure he was a hero to some too.
Well, it might have been. We might have been. So the word mighty, okay, or the mighty man here comes from the Hebrew Gibor, and it means mighty and powerful. By implication, a warrior. There's that word again, a tyrant. These all have negative connotations. A champion. What was Goliath? Do you remember? The Philistines sent out Goliath, and he was their what? Their champion. Okay? So renown, like I said, is to be known. It's either good or bad, famous or infamous. Now, for a reference, you say, well, who were these people? Right? How come we haven't heard of them? If these were mighty men of old, men of renown, why aren't they mentioned? They are. You have to read in Cain's lineage. Okay? So in Cain's lineage, we're going to come down to chapter 4, verse 24, a man named Lamech. Now that's a very similar name that we saw in Seth's lineage, Noah's ancestry. And he's boasting, he's a great-great-great-great-grandson. He's boasting to his wives. 2. He names them in the song, so there's 2. Adam and Zillah. Not Adam. Adah. I think it's Adah and Zillah. Okay? And he's boasting to them about how he has killed a man. He said, I've slain a man to my wounding, a young man to my hurt. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. Okay? So is he lamenting? Oh, what have I done? You know, if they wanted revenge on Cain, oh, they're going to really want revenge on me. No. He's boasting, not lamenting. He said, I killed a man, and it says to my wounding, right? I've killed a man for insulting me. We see that in every Western movie we watch practically, right? You're a no good, dirty liar. Take it back. Draw. Right? It was an insult. Right? And they killed him. He killed a man for insulting him, for hurting his pride. Okay? Now he says, if Cain, what's he doing? He's boasting. My daddy, my great-great-great-great-granddaddy, he was bad, but he was only 7. I'm going to have 10 times. It's like a crook saying, you know, my daddy was wanted by the FBI. There was a $10,000 reward on him. But for me, I've got $100,000 on my head. Ha! I'm way better than my daddy was. You see, you get the idea? He's boasting. He's boasting that he's 7 times, or 10 times, excuse me. He's, 11. I'm sorry, 11 times. He's 11 times. I know, this guy over here. He's 11 times badder. He's 11 times more man. He's 11 times more feared than his daddy. This is a boast, okay? And I read this to you because I want you to see this is exemplary of what the world was becoming. This intermarrying, right? The wives were coming in to the godly line and they were turning heads. They were turning heads because they were raised like men like this. This was a father to some wife married into Noah's lineage or ancestry. Okay? So, Cain founded cities. One of Cain's grandsons invented weapons. One, we just read, was a notorious killer. Right? One of Cain's grandsons was a teacher of ironworks and brassworks. Weapons. That's what it was. So, well, could have been pitchers. Sure, it could have been pitchers. But it was also weapons. It was all things metallurgy. Okay? So, it was kind of like the south side of Chicago. Okay? Yeah, right? It's okay. We're in Texas. I'm safe.
Yeah.
All right. So, in short, Seth's lineage was marrying ungodly women, but they were pretty and producing strong, stubborn bullies, tyrants, and murderers of wide reputation until a whole world of people was cursing God, except for that last line in the verses that we read tonight. But Noah found grace. Okay? And so we see this is what's happening right here. This is what's making God sick to his stomach. Okay? Now, I have a question. Why weren't the daughters of Adam pretty? What do you think? Why weren't the sons of man were pretty and they were marrying in? They were looking, I wonder, now this is just me, doing a little speculation, right? What turned the head of Herod so that John the Baptist was beheaded? Salome, right? She danced the dance of the 7 veils. And he said, what a dance! What do you want? I'll give you even to half the kingdom. I'll give it to you. What do you want? Right? And Mama whispers in her ear, ask for the head of John the Baptist. Right? Why weren't godly women pretty? Well, they were. But they weren't dancing the dance. They weren't seducing. They weren't seductresses. They weren't offering men the desires of their baser instincts. They were moral. Okay? They had a morality to them. Okay? Something to think about, though, isn't it? Okay? So, anyway, God has had enough. He knows that one of the problems here is lifespan. These people got too much time on their hands. Right? That's one of the big problems. Now, remember, Noah finds grace. So God's like, I got to figure out a way to shorten everybody's life up. That becomes obvious, okay? Think about how much trouble you could get into if you could act and be in. So, guys, most of us in here are just a little bit older. Remember back into your 20s? You remember that? That when you could lean over and pick up a pencil off the floor without going, oh! I had to kneel down and look at the brakes on a truck just a few minutes ago, and it was getting back up, right? I'm squatted down, and now I got to get up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a mistake. And I'm looking for a handle, right? Something to drag me up. Okay, so if you could be 25 for 700 years, how much trouble could you get into? Right. That's how much trouble you could get. You could get into a lot of trouble. You could really corrupt yourself. Right? You could, it staggers the mind. Now, God is upset even with the animals. So my question there was, were they living as long? You know, right now, how long does a deer, our deer expert is gone, how long does a deer usually live? 7 years, 8 years?
Depends.
Not in captivity. Not in captivity.
I thought if it gets
Crosshairs.
No, there's no crosshairs during the time of Noah. Come on, brother, stay with me now.
No,
They were chasing them with a sword and a knife. So yeah.
A large mammal usually, probably that large of a mammal probably could have been 20, 25 years.
Okay, 20, 25 years. What if they were living 600 and 700 years? What if animals were living that long? Everything is living that long. God said the big problem here is everybody's living too long. They're living so long that they think they're going to live forever. Right? Because when you're in your 20s, what do you think? Come on. All the time in the world. When you're in your 30s, what are you thinking? All the time in the world. Then one day you wake up and you're 70 and you're like, 10 years from now, I could be dead. Okay? So, God is filled with regret.
What did you say, Travis?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
If you're at 70, 10 minutes could be.
Yeah, that's true. God. So we see in the, I'm trying to get to the end. God, we see in those verses, God is filled with regret. He regrets making this, right? He's thinking this is just.
King James said
he repented,
Yeah.
right? He repented. He regretted it. He changed his mind. He said, "I shouldn't have made this." Right? It's gotten so bad. It's gotten so bad, right? And so, no one is worth saving. No thing is worth saving until what? He sees Noah, right? He says, Noah. Noah is the shining light, right, in the world. I wonder, what was Noah's faith like? If God looked at Noah and said, I can't put Noah through this, I'm fixing to make big changes, but Noah doesn't deserve it. What was Noah's faith like? Had to be. He had to be following the example of his ancestors, Adam, Seth, all the way down the line, sacrificing, praying, and believing. Okay? And so Noah didn't live like the other men. Noah didn't take a wife from the ungodly side. He took one of them moral wives, right? He took one of them church wives, right? Now, what they did in their bedroom, that's between them. But she didn't do anything outside of that that would embarrass Noah. Okay? So, Noah's wife was not like other women, right? They held God in high regard, followed Abraham's example of worship and sacrifice. And what do we see? The word grace is used for the first time to describe the relationship between God and a believer. We see the word grace. Noah found grace. Grace is something we don't see until the New Testament with Jesus, but here it is popping up in this moment, a moment that is antecedent to God's judgment. God's judgment is coming. He's already declared, my judgment is coming. I'm not going to put up with this, right? Judgment was prescribed at that moment, and yet in that moment, there was grace. Yep. Noah found grace. So, that's our beginning as we do this. So, stay tuned, because next week, our hero will say,
How big?
How big?
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
How old was Noah whenever he was given the instructions to start?
500.
And he only had 2 kids at that point? Three sons. So
He had 3 sons.
Would the moral side of the earth be only having 1 kid every 100 years versus the immoral side that because you kind of went over
Noah had 3 sons. Now, the Bible doesn't say. Now, Shem is the oldest. I think Shem is. I'll have to go back and check. Shem's a couple of 100 years old, right? But there are 3 sons who had stick with Noah. Doesn't mean he didn't have other sons and daughters, right? He could have had a whole slew of daughters and then had Shem, his firstborn son, because back then it was the firstborn son that was the heir, the rightful heir, okay? So it doesn't mean that he didn't have children before that, or it doesn't mean that he didn't have children and other sons that had abandoned him and gone off to live evil lives. That's not mentioned. Okay? So it's not a bad assumption to say he only had 3 sons. But neither would it be entirely honest to say he only had 3 sons. Right? We don't know. We just don't know. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, so prayers. What do I got for prayers tonight?